Many years ago, in the vibrant heart of Kumasi, lived a man unlike any other. His name was Grandpa Kwame, but the people did not call him that. To everyone, young and old, he was known as Fireman, not because he put out fires, but because he burned with an unquenchable passion. A passion for life, for adventure, and above all, for women. In his youth, Fireman was legendary for his charm and prowess, a reputation he stubbornly refused to let go of, even as the years crept up on him. While other men slowed down, surrendering to age and its demands, Fireman stood tall, back straight, chest out, and eyes still gleaming with mischief. He moved through Kumasi like a flame in the wind, igniting sparks wherever he went. The younger men admired him, marveling at his boundless energy. Women who had been with him whispered stories of his stamina, their voices tinged with both amusement and disbelief. "He doesn't stop, oh," one would say. "The man can go all night," another would add, shaking her head. "I thought I was strong until I met Fireman," one confessed. "My sister, I had to run away in the morning." For many years, Fireman was married to a quiet, patient woman named Mama A.A. She was his opposite in every way, gentle where he was bold, reserved where he was reckless. In the early years of their marriage, she tried to keep up with his endless energy, but after 5 children and countless sleepless nights, she surrendered. "Kwame," she warned him one day, "your fire will burn you." But Fireman only laughed. A fire that burns with purpose never goes out. Mama A.A. endured it all, the whispers, the late nights, the endless competition for his attention. She knew she could not change him, so she resigned herself to the reality of being married to a man who was never satisfied. But the burden was heavy. The stress of his ways became too much for her heart to bear, and one morning, she simply closed her eyes and never woke up. The people of Kumasi wept for her. "This woman really suffered," they murmured. "Fireman has finally killed her." His children were heartbroken, but Fireman himself saw her passing differently. To him, it was not a loss but a newfound freedom. Months after her funeral, his children pleaded with him. "Baba, you are not young anymore. You need a wife to take care of you." Fireman scoffed. "A wife? For what? So she can start complaining that I am too much for her? No, my dear. Your father is free now." His children shook their heads. They knew their father too well. He had never been a man who liked restrictions, and now, with no one to caution him, he saw life as an open road, his for the taking. Instead of settling down, Fireman embarked on a mission, a personal crusade to make the most of his remaining years. He traveled far and wide, meeting women from different places, leaving behind stories that would be told long after he was gone. At first, his children thought it was his way of grieving, but as years passed, it became clear, Fireman had no intention of stopping. Most men his age sat in their courtyards, drinking palm wine and reminiscing about the past. But Fireman, he was still out there, chasing pleasure like a young man in his prime. While his age-mates groaned about back pain and weak knees, Fireman strolled into bars, arm in arm with women young enough to be his granddaughters. "Look at Fireman," people would whisper whenever he entered a place. "He's with another young girl. At his age. How does he even do it?" Women who had only heard of his reputation found themselves drawn to him, eager to see if the legend was true. Fireman basked in the attention, walking into every room like a king, knowing all eyes were on him. One night, in a popular bar in Adam, Fireman arrived with a stunning young woman named Seema. She was 26, full of life and laughter, and clung to his arm like a trophy. The moment they entered, the room fell silent. Then the murmurs began. "Fireman has done it again," a young man whispered, shaking his head. Seema leaned in, giggling. "Fireman, why are they all looking at us like that?" He smiled, his confidence unshaken. "Because they know that when I walk in with a woman, she will never leave the same." But not everyone admired Fireman's ways. There were young men who envied him, frustrated that he was taking attention away from them. One day, a group of them approached him, one of them daring to ask, "Grandpa, please tell us, what is your secret?" Fireman laughed, shaking his head. "My boy, the secret is simple. Never start a battle you cannot finish." The young men chuckled, But in the background, an old warrior named Nana Atta shook his head in disapproval. "Kwame," he muttered bitterly, "one day, your strength will fail you." Fireman smirked. "That day has not come. And it never will." But he was wrong. That day was closer than he thought. At 70 years old, Fireman still refused to slow down. Then, one morning, something felt different. He had spent the night with a woman named Sika, a woman who had tested his limits, and for the first time, he woke up feeling tired. His legs were weak, his body heavy. "Ah, what is this now?" he grumbled, rubbing his waist. He tried to stand, but his knees wobbled like a newborn goat. A strange fear gripped him. "No, I am Fireman. I cannot be tired." But his body had other plans. He sat at the edge of the bed, breathing heavily. Sika stretched beside him. "Fireman, are you okay?" He forced a smile. "Of course. You think that small exercise can defeat me." But deep down, he knew the truth. Age was finally catching up with him. Refusing to surrender, he sought help from Uncle Ku, the best herbalist in Kumasi. The moment he walked in, Uncle Ku chuckled. "Ah, Fireman, have you finally retired?" "Retire? Me?" Fireman scoffed. "I need your help. Something is wrong. My body is misbehaving." Uncle Ku sighed. "Kwame, age is a stubborn thing. You can fight it, but it always wins." "Nonsense," Fireman snapped. "Just give me something strong." The herbalist handed him a special mixture. "This will give you energy, but be careful. Too much of anything is bad." Fireman ignored the warning. He declared war on time. He changed his diet, eating more meat, fish, eggs, and groundnuts. He started jogging in the mornings, lifting weights like a boxer in training. He ordered imported pills, potent and dangerous. People watched in shock. Fireman is training at his age? What is he preparing for? His children begged him. "Baba, please, you need to rest." Fireman scoffed. "Rest? Did God create me to rest?" "Baba, you will kill yourself." "And so what?" he grinned. "If I die a happy man." In the lively city of Kumasi, where stories of legends were told under moonlit skies, there lived a man who burned brighter than any other. His name was Grandpa Kwame, but to the world, he was Fireman. Not because he put out flames, but because he carried an unquenchable fire within him. A fire for life, for adventure, and above all, for women. Age had never been an obstacle for Fireman. Where other men surrendered to time, he defied it with a fearless grin. While his peers sat in their homes nursing their aching joints and reminiscing about their youth, Fireman still walked with a confident stride, his chest puffed out, his eyes dancing with mischief. He was a man who refused to be forgotten, a man determined to live until the very last drop of life had been wrung from his bones. One evening, Fireman was seated at his favorite drinking spot, enjoying the admiration of those around him, when his eyes landed on her, a woman unlike any he had ever seen before. She was young, wild, and carried herself with an air of reckless confidence. Her name was Afafa, and she was not an ordinary woman. Rumors about her had spread across Kumasi like wildfire. She was relentless, a storm that no man had ever conquered. She had left younger, stronger men breathless, defeated, unable to keep up. But when Fireman looked at her, he smiled. "This one," he muttered under his breath. "I must test her." With his usual charm, he approached her. "Beautiful lady," he said smoothly, "do you want to see something you have never seen before?" Afafa raised an eyebrow and smirked. Grandpa, please go and rest." Fireman grinned. "Don't call me Grandpa. Call me Fireman." She laughed. "Fireman? Can you even light a candle?" That was all he needed. A challenge. Fireman had faced many battles in his life, but this was one he would prepare for like never before. That night, he became a warrior in his own right. He drank his strongest herbal mixtures, took his imported pills, ate enough meat to feed a village, and even did push-ups to warm up. Then, with unwavering confidence, he called Afafa. "Tonight," he declared. "We are going 4 rounds. No stopping. I will shock you." Afafa smirked. "Are you sure, old man?" "You will see." When the night arrived, Fireman left nothing to chance. He bathed, oiled his body, and dressed like a king. When Afafa arrived, she took one look at him and burst into laughter. "Fireman, you are serious, oh. I told you. Tonight, we go to war." And so, round 1 began. Fireman moved with skill, his energy shocking Afafa. "Hey, Fireman, not bad," she admitted, impressed. Fireman smirked. "I told you, I'm not an ordinary man." Round 1 ended in triumph, but as round 2 began, the cracks started to show. Fireman's breath came in short, uneven bursts, his forehead glistening with sweat. "Are you slowing down, Fireman?" Afafa teased. "Never," he gasped, though his legs trembled beneath him. His heart pounded harder than it ever had, his body demanding rest. But he refused to surrender. Round 2 was a struggle, but he made it through. Then came round 3. Fireman knew he was in trouble. His vision blurred, his chest felt unbearably heavy. Afafa was still going strong, smiling as if the night had only just begun. "Fireman," she teased, "don't tell me you're tired, oh." He tried to respond, but his throat was dry. His body felt light, too light. Then, suddenly, silence. Afafa nudged him. "Fireman." No response. She shook him, harder this time. "Fireman, don't play with me." But there was nothing. No movement. No sound. She placed a trembling hand on his chest and froze. The realization struck her like lightning. Fireman had fallen in battle. A scream tore from her lips, raw with panic. In a frenzy, she grabbed her clothes and fled the house like a thief in the night, running through the streets, not stopping until she was far, far away. The next morning, Kumasi awoke to the usual sounds of life. Market women calling out to customers, children laughing as they played, taxi drivers honking impatiently. But something felt different. In Fireman's house, there was no movement. No loud humming of a man preparing for the day. It was strange. Fireman was never one to stay in bed past sunrise. Madame Amma, his next-door neighbor, noticed first. She had heard a loud scream the night before but had brushed it off, assuming it was just Fireman celebrating another victory. She smiled to herself. This man. Even at his age, he's still doing wonders. But as the morning stretched on and Fireman's door remained shut, unease settled in her chest. "Fireman!" she called from outside. "Are you still sleeping?" No answer. Her heart skipped a beat. Something was wrong. Without wasting time, she banged on the door. "Kwame, wake up, oh." Silence. By now, a small crowd had gathered. "What's happening?" someone asked. "Fireman hasn't come out since last night," Madame Amma explained, worry creeping into her voice. The murmurs spread quickly. "Is Fireman sick?" "Maybe he's just resting." "Resting? Does Fireman rest?" The young men of the neighborhood exchanged glances. One of them stepped forward. "Let's break the door." With a loud kick, the door swung open. And there he was. Fireman lay motionless on the bed, his eyes open, his face frozen in a smirk, as if he had left the world with satisfaction. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. Then, a piercing scream. "Jesus!" The young men stumbled back in fear. The old men shook their heads. The women wailed. "Fireman is gone." The news spread through Kumasi like wildfire. His children, upon hearing, rushed to his house. They had warned him. They had begged him. But he had refused to listen. His eldest daughter, Aosa, collapsed to her knees, wailing. "Baba, we told you." His sons stood in stunned silence. "So this is how it ends," one murmured. "We warned him," another whispered, shaking his head. "He didn't listen." They were heartbroken, but not surprised. Deep down, They had always known firemen would not leave this world in an ordinary way. And they were right. Fireman's funeral was unlike any other. People came from far and wide, not just family and friends, but women. Many, many women. Some cried. Some smiled knowingly. Others simply came to confirm that the legend was truly gone. "So fireman is really gone," one woman sighed. "Ah, and I never even got my chance with him." The young men of Kumasi came too, mourning not just a man, but a hero, one who had defied time, who had lived without fear. Now he was gone, but his name would never be forgotten. At the funeral, Reverend Yu stood before the crowd. He cleared his throat, struggling to find the right words. "Let this be a lesson in moderation," he finally said. "Even the strongest fires must be controlled." Some nodded in agreement. But in the crowd, an old man shook his head. No. Fireman was a warrior. He lived how he wanted, and he died how he wanted. That is not failure. That is victory. The young men cheered. The old women rolled their eyes. And the preacher sighed, knowing that nothing, not even death, could change the legacy of firemen.